The political romance is over. Before Christmas, Nigel Farage posed with Elon Musk at Donald Trump's Florida estate, along with Reform UK's treasurer Nick Candy, in front of a portrait of America's next president. There were rumours the world's richest man might bankroll reform. But Nigel Farage's mistake, it seems, was not backing Elon Musk all the way after his incendiary attacks on the government over historic child grooming scandals. The owner of X suggested Keir Starmer failed to pursue rapists when chief Crown prosecutor and promoted a video of jailed far-right campaigner Tommy Robinson. Nigel Farage said about Elon Musk,
"The fact that he supports me politically and supports reform doesn't mean I have to agree with every single statement he makes on X. I think I've made it perfectly clear that I don't agree with everything he stands for, but I do believe in free speech. I think he's a hero."
But it seems that wasn't enough for Elon Musk. When he woke up stateside, he turned on Nigel Farage, saying the Reform Party needs a new leader. Farage doesn't have what it takes. Elon Musk's new favourite seems to be Tommy Robinson, who used to head the English Defence League, whom he says was put in prison for telling the truth about Britain. He was actually jailed for contempt of court.
We make Britain great again!
Nigel Farage, who's in the middle of a series of rallies, has said Elon Musk's broadside is a surprise. He's a remarkable individual, he said, but Tommy Robinson is not right for reform. Never mind that he says he's never asked to join the party, although some of its members are supporters of his. The government too is having to deal with Elon Musk's current obsession with British politics, specifically his criticism of the records of the Prime Minister and Jess Phillips and his call for a public inquiry into child sexual exploitation.
We've had an independent inquiry on child sexual exploitation. Not a single one of those recommendations was implemented by the last government. We are determined to implement those recommendations. And when it comes to the Prime Minister, our Victims Minister Jess Phillips, these are people who in their professional lives outside politics have put more rapists, wife beaters and paedophiles behind bars than their critics could ever do.
The previous Conservative government also declined to lead an investigation into grooming in Oldham, but the party is now calling for a national inquiry.
What is clear to everybody, apart from the Labour government, is that we do need a proper public inquiry to get to the bottom of the truth behind this, so lessons can be learned and those people who are guilty of covering this up can be brought to justice.
Elon Musk has power and influence and did have a soft spot for Nigel Farage. But in the end, his intervention in UK politics put pressure on the relationship, and it could be the end of the affair.
Jane Deeth reporting. Well, earlier I spoke to Mark Owen Jones, who's an Associate Professor of Media Analytics at Northwestern University in Qatar and an expert on disinformation. I began by asking, with Musk turning his fire on Nigel Farage after days of attacking Keir Starmer, what's going on?
Well, you might argue it's the snake eating its tail. I think Elon Musk is slightly upset, perhaps, that Farage didn't completely endorse Musk's support for Tommy Robinson, who, as everyone knows, is a far-right anti-Islam activist. And Elon Musk seems to support Tommy Robinson quite a lot. And Farage has been sort of more reluctant to embrace Tommy Robinson. And it seems that Musk really wants to sort of encourage the kind of far-right politics in Europe that is very potently, not just anti-migrant and anti-immigrant, but anti-Muslim. And I think Tommy Robinson embodies that. And so whilst Farage is probably seething deep down, I'm sure he knows that if he engages in a feud with Musk, that might sort of burn bridges with Musk, might prevent the possibility of getting a lot of money to reform, and ultimately burn an important bridge with Donald Trump. Let's not forget that Farage is trying to position himself as a link between the UK and the US and talking about how we can perhaps facilitate a trade deal.
Why do you think that Musk is going about this in this way? Why do you think he's posting more, getting more stridently involved in other countries' politics?
I think there's a number of things at play. I think, one, Musk is himself an ambitious person, not just in terms of his commercial and economic projects, but I think his taste of notoriety, especially through social media, and then his subsequent buying of X, has given him a taste for political power. And if you look at Musk's tweets over the lifetime, you can see that increasingly he's tweeting more. His tweets are getting more neurotic, more political. So I think increasingly Musk is showing himself to have been, I argue, radicalized by his own platform and by his own fame.
Well, he would call himself a free speech absolutist. I do wonder what his end game is, what his strategy is to fire off all of these different tweets.
There's a number of things that I think are at stake here. You could argue that his backing of Trump was to hopefully win power, and that was a bet that would basically allow Musk to essentially get rid of all the legal cases against his companies. I think there's a lot to be said for power and impunity. Let's not forget that he's endorsed Trump and Tommy Robinson, both of whom are, well, Trump's a felon, a convicted felon. Tommy Robinson's in prison. And I think for someone like Musk, he sees his influence and the access to power as a form of impunity, which for him means that as long as he's in power or attached to power or has the ability to influence politics, he is essentially untouchable.
But will he have that power if he falls out with President-elect Trump?
The question is, if he does fall out with Trump, yes, Trump is the president, argument more powerful, but I think Musk has the ego and the level of narcissism that he might start to eventually see himself as a sort of person who could even rival Trump. Think of Icarus. You know, Icarus was ambitious and flew too close to the sun. That could be Musk. He could play with fire, incur Trump's wrath, and then lose grace. Or the way Musk sees it, he might be able to actually position himself in a way that he might make Trump look bad.
And just finally, I wanted to ask you about Musk's influence on the world in general. Should there be stronger sanctions against someone like Musk being able to post what he's posting?
As Musk demonstrates himself to be someone engaged in often what we criticize other countries of, like Russia, foreign interference, which is essentially what he's doing, the governments might have no choice but to take more punitive measures. We have to take the platform from under him. And I also think as a society, yes, government needs to take measures, but we have to wonder now as news organizations and politicians, to what extent now should we be using X or endorsing X if that's a platform owned by someone who is essentially trying to undermine British democracy? I think that's another question we have to ask ourselves.
Mark Owen-Jones, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.